Can you guess what the #1 empowerment tool is to help kids and adults navigate dangerous emotions? It is the body-mind tool aspect of personal growth. So we know that we need to use mental communication, discipline, guidance, advice, information. But what's often overlooked in our society is the emotional aspects of how to discharge emotion, because in kids, the back brain, the emotions is what's driving so much of their behavior. So even though they might know what they should be doing, they might not even think about what they should be doing. Their emotions are more present for them. And their prefrontal cortex brain is not fully developed till into their 20s, and it's even later for boys. So when we are counting on ration and mind to keep our kids safe, we're overlooking the emotions, which is what drives them. I'm Elynn Light, teen and parent empowerment coach, and I'm so happy to meet you today. I grew up in a family that was very stressful to me. I had early trauma, and deep into my 40s, I was still struggling emotionally to just get along. I started as a psychiatric nurse in the 70s. I've been at this for more years than either of us wants to count. I've devoted my life to finding those tools to help you in the fastest, most efficient, most powerful ways. And it turns out that the emotions and energy are carried in the tissue of the body and on the nervous system. So if we want to release emotion, we need to understand how to get it out of the body, how to get it out of the tissue. So a lot of people have heard about EFT tapping, which means tapping on end points of meridians to release emotion. I'm going to make a separate video to teach you that. There's a lot of videos on it, but when I use tapping with people for deeper issues, I'm also using those points that reorders the information in the brain. This is getting kind of technical, but a lot of people say, do you do EMDR? Well, in EMDR, we're reordering things in the brain. I don't do EMDR, but I add to tapping what does do what EMDR does into the brain, which is reorder how it's stored and what it's connected to, so it's not clustered up in the same way in the brain. Okay, so the #1 empowerment tool is learn how to release trauma from the body by either using tapping, and I call it deeper tapping, or another really powerful way to connect in is so simple that people just kind of dismiss it until you've tried it and seen the results yourself. When we think about a situation, so you could do this right now and test it out. I want you to think of a person that stresses you out, that you don't really like. And so I want you to picture that person. And now I want you to sense what happens in your body when you think of that person. So notice, is there a tightness? What else do you notice? And check throat, check heart, check gut, check your arms and your legs. So sometimes we feel, oh my gosh, I don't want to, as much of as a comedian as I can be sometime, we can save that part of me for later, but it's natural to, when you're angry, want to strike out. So sometimes we feel like there's something in the arms and the legs, like in the legs, they want to run. And so you're like, yeah, my legs are tense. Yeah, it's because that urge to kick or to run is being held back. So if we stay in touch with our natural body responses, it is extraordinarily useful. And my mind now wants to go in 6 directions. Let me bring it back in. So let's go back to thinking about that person that stresses you out. You're going to track your body sensation. So culturally, we're conditioned that if there's anything negative, any stress, anything wrong, we want to race in with a solution and race in with the fix. When we're tracking body sensation, we do the opposite. We give it full permission to be there exactly as it is and sit with it with compassion and curiosity. So when we're tracking body sensation and allowing that tension to be there, it digests and dissolves on its own, and either an awareness will pop in like, oh, blah, 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 or it'll just dissolve and be neutral. So when we don't have a charge, a tightness, and a tension around a person, a subject, a situation, we're able to be more neutral, and we're able to have a more positive interaction or a more creative solution about how you want to handle it, right? This isn't going to mean that you're going to naturally choose to want to be best friends with that person, but it's going to enable you to handle them differently, okay? So body-mind tools are crucial. So in parenting, we all know that we're not going to wait till our kids are 13 to start parenting. Parenting starts early. It starts when they're young. So hopefully when they were young, we have been paying attention to who our child is, what their gifts are, and we've been encouraging those gifts, acknowledging those gifts. And what this is going to do is give our kids a self-confidence about who they are and what their gifts are. So if we want our kids to be immune to peer pressure, they need this sense of value and this sense of self, because developmentally, kids are wanting to fit in, needing to fit in, and sometimes even feeling desperate and anxious about fitting in, like, I have to fit in, you know. And then they begin to resort to people pleasing, or wearing the thing that's clothing that's in, or doing things on social media for approval, rather even bullying others so that they can fit in and be on those winning teams rather than losing teams. So we can equip our kids to be more immune to peer pressure, the more self-confidence that they have built up, and to teach them that there are options, that when it feels scary or frustrating in this whole peer pressure dynamic, which has grown in recent years with social media, and our kids are never getting a break from those kids at school. Now they're taking them home on their phones with them at night as well. Okay, so I listed a few things here about what we would use this empowerment tool. Next would be neutralizing the seduction of sex and drugs. Does anybody think that might be important? So the sexual culture has changed. It's very different. And so yes, as parents, we need to educate our kids about sex and drugs. Sex, there's still STDs, sexually transmitted disease, that's going to come along. And I don't think I'm going to speak here about what I know about what's going on in the sexual culture, but if we want to prepare our kids to be more insulated about doing what's right for them, the mind-body tools will help. And then in terms of drugs are crucial. We can't have our heads in the sand. It's not like, well, first of all, with alcohol, some kids are going to feel and be addicted at early ages and want more and more and more alcohol. We know that phrase, 1 is too many and 1,000's not enough. And we don't know what drug is going to give your kid's brain that thing like, oh, that's for me, that's the thing that I want the most. Chocolate, cacao is that substance for my brain. It's like, oh my gosh, can I get some more of that? I love the way I feel with that. And thank God it's not heroin, right? So drugs now are not as clean as they used to be. So the dangers are greater. As parents, we need to understand that drugs are now cut. It's no longer just pot. There's angel dust, PCP, all kinds of things that pot is laced with. Heroin is no longer straight heroin. It's cut with, gosh, it's a synthetic drug, and when it's taken, it actually shuts down the brain, and the breathing center slows down, and CPR won't revitalize. So we don't want to parent out of like threats and fear. We want to educate our kids so that they can make good decisions around sex and drugs, so that they will be safer. And if abstinence is your position, the more education you give your kids, the more likely they're going to choose to abstain from sex and or drugs on their own. So feeling alone is the underneath core of a lot of issues for not only young people, but adults. And the body-mind tools can release this, whether it's an emotion held of just feeling alone and empty. It's uncomfortable to sit with that emptiness, that ache, that hollowness. And when it's in there, when it's been there a long time, it can lead to depression and powerlessness and can go into a belief. So it sounds like this, like, I'm alone. It's always going to be that way. So we look in the future and it's a depressing future, and there's nothing I can do about it. I'm powerless to change that. Now it's locked in the body, and we need to come into the body and move that out of there. We want to intervene with tracking the body sensation, tapping on those meridian points to move that out so that we can be restored to what the truth is, because we're in this world with billions of people. So the education part is we're feeling alone. We don't feel connected to a tribe because bad feelings we have about ourselves, but maybe it's because we have different interests and we need to connect with people with those same interests. So as parents, we want to be looking out for how we can connect our kids to places in the world and societies that are going to be a match for their natural curiosities and gifts. Okay? Lastly, well, teen suicide is at a 35% increase than ever. So in 2018, 30% increase in teen suicide. There's a lot of things driving this behavior, but most oftentimes when there is a suicide, drugs and alcohol are involved with that. But sometimes also there can be a traumatic event involved and an emotional response to that traumatic event. And it would often be with rejection or with a sexual trauma. So when we look at traumatic events, what we know is that 1 in 5 kids has sexual trauma. And there's other kinds of trauma. There's trauma from neglect, from abandonment, from criticism, from physical harm. That's sometimes done by a parent or a relative. And you need to know, if you don't already, that sexual trauma is 90% of the time done by somebody that they already know. So it's not that the strangers are the most likely to be perpetrating sexual abuse. It's usually someone known to the family. So rather than having the kid have to carry this secret, they need a safe adult to talk to. And hopefully you are going to be that safe adult, or you can provide them with a counselor, a therapist, or a coach that will be that safe adult to help them navigate through and out of that trauma. The trauma is carried in the tissue on the body. So again, we're going to come in and intervene with a body-mind tool, the tapping, the body tracking, the body dialogue. And that's going to release the trauma off the nervous system, out of the body tissue. And it can make trauma like an old movie that they watched rather than something that they're reliving over and over again. So the number one empowerment tool is those body-mind tools, releasing those emotions out of the body and off the tissue. So is the intellect, is the mind important? Yes, we need both. And I'm here to support you in doing both, but my specialty for the last 30 years has been teaching people how to release trauma, to move it out of the body so that they don't have the emotional pain and the physical pain symptoms that come from having trauma in the body. It would be my delight to speak with you. If you would like to share what's going on in your family and what kind of support you'd like, if you have any questions, contact me. It's the thing that I love is help healing trauma and giving people the tools to release negative emotion. Thanks so much for listening. Great to meet you today. And the next video will be how to use one of these tapping tools. Thanks.